Can 4 vegetables really produce 100 pounds of food before winter? That's exactly what I'm trying to do. Every July, parts of my garden start to free up. My onions are almost done, my potatoes are finished, and all of a sudden I have these empty spaces. But instead of leaving those beds empty till spring, I'm going to turn them into another harvest. Today I'll show you the 4 vegetables I'm planting, the varieties I've chosen, and how much food I'm expecting from each. Plus, the last vegetable on this list consistently gives me the highest yield per square foot of the crops listed in my garden. The first vegetable I'm starting is cabbage. Unlike a lot of the summer vegetables that start to struggle when the temperatures start to cool down, cabbage absolutely loves it. As we move into September and October, those cooler temperatures allow the cabbage to form its nice, firm heads that once harvested store incredibly well. That's something I really appreciate this time of year when I'm starting to build food up for the fall and winter. Nutritionally, cabbage is packed with fiber, vitamin C, and vitamin K, making it a vegetable that's easy to grow and good for you. The variety I'm growing is called Tiara, and I love it because it fits my small backyard garden very well. Instead of producing giant heads that take up lots of room in the garden, it produces compact 1 to 2 pound size heads in about 60 days, which fits well into my remaining season. Since cabbage takes a little bit of time to mature, I'm starting the seeds indoors now in mid-July in order to transplant outside mid-August, once my onions are finally finished. Because Tiara stays so compact, I like to space mine out 1 per square foot. They'll actually be going along the edge of one of my raised beds, so they'll be able to spill over the edge if they need more room without crowding out the remaining crops in the bed. Cabbage is definitely a heavier feeder in my garden. It likes rich soil with consistent moisture and at least 6 to 8 hours of sunlight a day. My soil tends to be low in nitrogen, so I like to add blood meal at planting time and then follow up throughout the season with a liquid fertilizer to keep the plant steadily growing. One thing to keep in mind is that cabbage really does produce the best heads in cool weather. If it stays too hot or if the plants get too much nitrogen, you'll end up with a plant with lots of leafy growth with no true tight head. One of my biggest enemies in the garden every year is the cabbage moth. And if you've grown brassicas before, you've probably seen them. Thankfully, a few applications of BT keeps those caterpillars under control before they do too much damage. If we happen to have a particularly wet fall, I'll keep an eye out for slugs. My method for dealing with slugs is to go out in the evening, check the plants, and hand pick them. It's kind of gross, but it does the job. Earlier this summer, I harvested 5 beautiful Tiara cabbages with a total weight just over 8 pounds. For this fall, I'm planting out at least another 7 plants, and I'm hoping they will produce a harvest of at least 12 pounds. My favorite way to use cabbages changes throughout the year. In the spring, I like to use it in a crispy ramen salad. In the summer, it gets used up in fresh coleslaw and tacos. And then in the fall, I like to use it with kale and make a roasted quinoa salad. When it comes to storing cabbages, I simply leave them unwashed in plastic bags in the crisper drawer of my refrigerator, and they stay fresh that way for quite a while. While cabbage gives me a reliable harvest heading into the fall, the next few crops are where the numbers really start to climb, starting with carrots. The variety I'm growing this fall is called Chantenay Red. It takes about 75 days to mature. The reason I chose a Chantenay style carrot is because my soil can be quite heavy, and this variety of carrot handles the heavy soil better than some of the long, thin varieties. The bed they're going into previously held my potato crop, and since I loosened the soil pretty good while harvesting the potatoes, the soil's in pretty good shape. But I did add quite a bit of peat moss to keep that soil open and loose. Carrots really do reward good soil preparation. If the soil is too compacted or if it's filled with rocks, you'll often get lots of twisted or forked carrots instead of the nice straight ones you're looking for. For spacing, I'm aiming for about 9 carrots per square foot. The reason being is Chantenay carrots are pretty thick around, so I want to give them lots of space to fill out. One challenge with carrots this time of year is to get them germinating in the heat. The tiny little seeds like to dry out really quickly. To help with that, I'm actually covering them with a layer of cardboard. The cardboard helps hold soil moisture while keeping it cool underneath. Every day, I'll lift the cardboard and check to see if those seedlings are emerging. Soon as they're up, the cardboard comes off. You don't want to leave the cardboard on for too long because those seedlings do need access to sunlight. Plus, it's a great hiding spot for pill bugs, which my toddler would probably find amusing, but my carrots absolutely do not. Once the carrots have germinated and are thinned to the correct spacing, they're a pretty easy crop to take care of. It's mostly about keeping watering even while they're getting established. After that, I just make sure that I'm keeping weeds under control because carrots don't like early weed competition. When it comes to harvest expectations, I'm estimating about 1.5 pounds of carrots per square foot. This year, I'm planting out 32 square feet of carrots for a total harvest estimate of 48 pounds, if everything goes well. Last fall, I harvested 39 pounds of carrots from 24 square feet, so I think this is a realistic estimate. Carrots are one of those vegetables we use constantly. Last year, I used them in a canned chicken soup, and I want to make so much more of it this year. They're a staple in chicken pot pie, which I like to make in batches and freeze in the freezer for quick dinners. They are great roasted and added to stews or just eaten fresh from the garden. They are also one of the best storage vegetables. Kept in the refrigerator, they'll stay fresh for months, making them a really dependable crop if your goal is to feed your family past the growing season. We are already more than halfway to our 100-pound mark from carrots and cabbage alone, producing about 60 pounds. And we haven't even planted our highest yielding crop of the bunch. The next two vegetables are among the easiest to grow for fall, and one of them regularly produces more than 2 pounds per square foot in my garden. The next vegetable I'm planting is beets. Now, beets can be a little bit of a divisive vegetable. You either love them or you really don't. But even if they're not your favorite and they aren't ours, I think you should make room for them in the fall garden. Nutritionally, they're a pretty substantial crop. They are packed full of folate, potassium, magnesium, and iron. The variety I'm growing is called Early Wonder Tall Top. Now, the seed packet says that it will mature in 55 days, but in my garden, I have found that it takes 65 days to get a root that I'm happy harvesting. Just like carrots, beets really do appreciate a loosened soil. If the soil is too compacted, they won't form up the nice roots you're looking for. I plant my beets 4 per square foot, which has worked quite well for me over the last few years. This fall, though, I'm going to try a little bit of an experiment. I'm going to plant 1 green onion in the center of each group of beets. The nicest beets I've ever grown were planted alongside onions. Looking back, I think there's 2 reasons for that. First, they were growing in full sun, which I have learned they really need in order to get a nice swollen root. Second, I wonder if the smell of the onions deterred the leaf miner. Speaking of leaf miner, they have been one of the biggest challenges I have had while growing beets. The larvae tunnel through the leaves, making some pretty unsightly damage. Thankfully, they don't usually damage the root itself, but some severe damage can stunt the plant. This fall, my plan is to stay on top of them, to remove any eggs as I see them, and to squish the larvae before they can spread. I'm planting 8 square feet of beets with an estimate of about 1.5 pounds per square feet. That works up to roughly 12 pounds of beets. As for eating them, my favorite way is probably roasted with some honey and feta. For my sons, on the other hand, the only way to get them to eat beets is hidden inside some homemade gnocchi, which has become a family favorite way of eating them. And if I can keep the leaf miner under control, I like to use the beet greens in place of spinach in spinach and feta pastries instead of letting all those beautiful greens go to waste. And the highest yielding crop per square foot of this list is turnips. Based on my estimates, turnips produce about 2 pounds per square foot. I'm growing purple top white globes that mature in about 55 to 60 days. For this first planting, I'm planting them out 4 per square foot. This gives them enough room for the roots to really size up. Then later in August, when my onions are done producing, I'm going to plant another succession of turnips. That one I'm going to plant 9 per square foot. I'm interested to see if 4 larger turnips will produce more than 9 smaller turnips. Turnips are awesome because if you give them reasonably good soil and keep them watered while they're getting established, they pretty much take care of themselves. In fact, last year I had planted out some turnips after I had harvested out my potatoes, and I had completely forgotten about them until later in the fall when it was time to harvest. I ended up harvesting around 10 pounds of turnips from a space I had completely forgotten about. This year I'm planting 14 square feet of turnip with an estimated yield of 2 pounds per square foot for a total harvest of 28 pounds of turnips. That is my highest yielding crop per square foot of this list. Last fall, I added mashed turnip to cottage pie instead of the traditional mashed potatoes, and we absolutely adored it. I did add some hollandaise sauce, which I think didn't hurt. They're also fantastic roasted with carrots, broccoli, and other root crops. With the broccoli especially, I like how it allows me to stretch my broccoli harvest over across more meals. And like the other root crops we talked about today, they store quite well in the refrigerator for quite a long time, making them a productive and dependable crop to help build out that fall and winter food storage. Before you head outside and start planting, there's one more thing that's just as important as choosing the right vegetables: knowing how many days you have left to your growing season. I like to use the Old Farmer's Almanac to find my first frost date, but I don't stop there. Even though the weather is still warm in July, the days are starting to shorten as we head into late summer and fall, and naturally plant growth slows as a result. Because of that, I like to add a week or two onto those listed days of maturity to ensure that crops have enough time to finish up before my first frost. So before you grab those seed packets, figure out how many days you have left in your own area. That'll let you choose the right varieties for the time you have remaining. So if everything goes according to plan, these 4 vegetables will have produced just around 100 pounds of food before winter, from garden beds that otherwise would stay empty. That's about 12 pounds of cabbages, 48 pounds of carrots, 12 pounds of beets, and 28 pounds of turnips. More importantly, it's a reminder that July is not the end of the growing season. In a lot of ways, it's the beginning of a completely different one. The cooler weather is easier to work in. A lot of these crops do better as the temperatures drop. And instead of watching your garden slowly wind down, you can keep harvesting into the fall. Even if you don't plant all 4 of these vegetables, just adding 1 or 2 to an empty bed can make a surprising difference on how much food your garden can produce over the year. If you're planting a fall garden this year, let me know in the comments what you're planting. I'd love to hear what does well where you live. If you found this video helpful, please be sure to subscribe. I'll be sharing updates on how these crops produce and seeing how close we got to that 100-pound harvest.